Just a few days ago, in Sony's annual gaming event State of Play, the gameplay trailer for the upcoming God of War game God of War Laufey was released. And just the mere reveal has divided the community into two parts, with one side being on the positive and are ready to experience the story of Faye. The other side, however, are seriously disappointed by this decision, saying God of War means Kratos and it's not acceptable for anyone else to lead the franchise but Kratos. Some fans are even going to the extents of calling this game God of War Laundry or God of Woke. So, in this video, I am going to cover this controversy by telling all the negatives and positives felt by the fans and will give my opinion regarding the game towards the end. But before we talk about the controversy itself, we first need to answer one important question. Who exactly is Laufey? Better known as Faye, she is the wife of Kratos and the mother of Atreus. At first glance, she may seem like a minor character. After all, she was already dead when the God of War 2018 began. But the reality is very different. Faye wasn't just Kratos' wife, she was a powerful giant warrior, the original owner of the Leviathan axe, and one of the most important figures in the entire Norse saga. In fact, many of the events that take place throughout God of War 2018 and Ragnarok can be tracked back to her decisions. It was Faye's final decision that sent Kratos and Atreus on their journey across the Nine Realms. A journey that would eventually help Kratos confront his past and help Atreus discover who he truly was. Which is exactly why Santa Monica's decision to make her the protagonist of the next God of War game has generated so much discussion within the community. So, if Faye is such an important character, why are so many fans angry? The absence of Kratos. When you read the words God of War or hear someone mention the franchise, the first thing that comes to mind is Kratos, the embodiment of strength, rage, and masculinity. For more than 20 years, Kratos has been the face of God of War, earning the love and respect of millions of gamers around the world. So removing him, or rather shifting the spotlight away from him and onto another character, isn't something many fans can easily accept. For a lot of people, Kratos isn't just a protagonist of God of War, he is the God of War. Because of that, some fans fear that moving away from Kratos could eventually cause the franchise to lose the identity that made it so iconic in the first place, and honestly, that's understandable. Does Faye's story need to be told? As I mentioned earlier in the video, it was Faye's death that kickstarted the entire Norse saga. Despite being one of the most important characters in the story, Faye has rarely been shown on the screen. Most of what we know about her comes from stories told by other characters, which has created a deep sense of mystery around her. And that mystery is exactly why many fans find her so fascinating. However, some critics believe that making a sequel focused on Faye could potentially undermine that mystery. From what we have seen so far, the game's story appears to take place after her death, with what seems to be a journey that may eventually lead her back to Kratos and Atreus. And that's where some fans have concerns. They argue that certain characters are more impactful when parts of their story are left untold. By fully exploring Faye's journey, the game risks answering questions that are perhaps better left to the imagination. Many critics have said they would have preferred a prequel showing Faye's life before the events of God of War 2018 or how she met Kratos for the first time. A sequel, however, is not the direction they were hoping for. The character design backlash. Another criticism that surfaced shortly after the reveal was related to Faye's character design. Some fans expressed disappointment with her in-game appearance, arguing that she looked older or less attractive than a real-life actress. And personally, this is the criticism that I completely disagree with. Faye isn't a Hollywood star or a fashion model. She is a battle-hardened warrior who has spent her life fighting gods, protecting giants, and surviving in a brutal world. So, expecting her to look flawless at all the time feels extremely unrealistic. In my opinion, her rugged appearance actually fits the character and the story far better than a more glamorous design would. Whether the game succeeds or fails should ultimately depend on its story, characters, and gameplay, not on whether a warrior looks attractive enough. The woke accusations. Another criticism that has become increasingly common online is the claim that God of War Laufey is a woke project. Some fans believe that the decision to shift the focus from Kratos to a female protagonist is not a creative choice, but rather an attempt to follow modern industry trends. Because of this, a portion of the community has labeled the game as agenda driven before it has even been released. However, supporters of the game argue that Faye is not a newly created character being inserted into the franchise. She has been a major part of the Norse saga from the very beginning, with many of the most important events in the story directly connected to her actions. At the end of the day, this is one of the most divisive aspects of the controversy, and opinions on it vary greatly depending on who you ask. Now, while these criticisms are understandable, they only represent one side of the discussion. Because for every fan who is disappointed by God of War Laufey, there is another who believes this game has the potential to become one of the most unique entries in the franchise. So let's take a look at the positive side of the debate. Faye isn't a random character. One of the strongest arguments in favor of God of War Laufey is that Faye isn't a random character who was suddenly inserted into the franchise. In many ways, she has been one of the most important figures in the Norse saga from the very beginning. It was her final wish that sent Kratos and Atreus on their journey. It was her guidance that helped shape the future of both characters, and it was her hidden prophecies that ultimately led Kratos towards redemption. While Kratos was the hero of the Norse saga, Faye was its architect. Because of that, supporters of the game argue that if any character, rather than replacing an important character, they see this game as finally giving one of the franchise's most influential figures the spotlight she always deserved. Besides Kratos deserves a standalone title, it is Faye. The fresh gameplay possibilities. One of the biggest reasons many fans are excited about God of War Laufey is the gameplay itself. From the past two Norse games, we have played as Kratos, a character whose combat style is built around power, strength, and overwhelming force. Kratos feels like a tank. Every swing of the Leviathan axe feels heavy, every punch feels devastating, and every fight feels like two unstoppable forces colliding with each other. Faye, however, appears to be the complete opposite. Based on the gameplay shown so far, her combat seems to focus far more on agility, speed, fluidity, and aerial movement. She can move between the ground and the air much more freely, creating a combat style that looks very different from what we have experienced in the Norse games so far. And that difference doesn't just affect combat. A more agile protagonist could also open the door for entirely new types of traversals and puzzle design that simply wouldn't work with Kratos' heavier playstyle. Another highlight from the gameplay, whose combat sequence immediately caught the attention of many fans, reveal was the fight with backseat. Made some players generally excited to see what Santa Monica Studio can do with a completely different protagonist. The fast-paced action and dynamic interactions shown in these encounters have God of War Laufey isn't trying to replace Kratos. It's trying to offer a different gameplay experience while still remaining part of the same universe. Everywhen and multiple pantheon potential. Perhaps the most exciting aspect of God of War Laufey is its setting. According to the information revealed so far, the game takes place within the Everywhen, a mysterious realm described as the afterlife of the gods. This idea alone has massive potential for the future of the franchise. Throughout the God of War series, we have explored different mythologies one at a time. First Greek mythology, then Norse mythology. However, the Everywhen appears to be something much bigger. If this realm truly exists beyond the boundaries of a single pantheon, it would allow the story to introduce gods, creatures, and mythological figures from multiple cultures within the same narrative. The reveal trailer also introduced a strange companion character who looks like a cube and is voiced by Jack Quaid, who refers to the Everywhen as the afterlife of the gods, further suggesting that this world may be unlike anything we have seen before in the franchise. And if Santa Monica Studio executes this idea properly, God of War Laufey could become one of the most ambitious world-building projects the series has ever attempted. For many fans, that possibility alone is enough to be excited. Santa Monica's track record. Another reason many fans remain optimistic about God of War Laufey is the studio behind it. At the end of the day, this is still Santa Monica Studio, the same studio that successfully reinvented the franchise with God of War 2018, the same studio that delivered God of War Ragnarok, one of the most critically acclaimed games in recent years. Because of that, many fans believed the studio has earned the benefit of the doubt. After all, when God of War 2018 was first announced, there were also concerns about the new direction, the over-the-shoulder camera, and the more mature version of Kratos. Yet, the final result ended up exceeding almost everyone's expectations. And for that same reason, many players believe that it is simply too early to judge the God of War Laufey before we have actually experienced the full game for ourselves. Now that we have looked at both sides of the debate, here's where I personally stand. Personally, I find myself leaning towards the positive side of this discussion. And before I explain why, I should probably confess something. I'm a huge God of War fan and I have played the older versions of God of War through some, let's just say, unappreciated methods and have thoroughly enjoyed watching Kratos turn entire pantheons into dust. And for the Norse saga, let's just say my experience with God of War 2018 in Ragnarok has been mostly through Beast by Show because of monetary reasons. So, the moment I saw Santa Monica logo appear during State of Play, I was hyped. And the more I thought about this game, the more I realized just how much potential it actually has. The biggest reason for that is the game's setting. From everything we have seen so far, God of War Laufey takes place in the Everywhen, the afterlife of the gods. And the reveal trailer already gives us a glimpse of how ambitious this idea could be. Not only do we have Backseat, the Mongolian and Tibetan God of War, but we also have Sekhmet, one of the most recognizable figures from the Egyptian mythology, who is also the Egyptian God of War. That alone tells us something very important. This is no longer a story restricted to a single pantheon. For the first time in the franchise, we may be entering a realm where gods from the completely different mythologies can coexist. And if Santa Monica fully commits to that idea, we can have this meme becoming canon.
Get off of me! Chill! Get off of me! This is all your fault! All of it!
So, how'd it go?
How the fuck do you think it went? All for that nigga Peace, and he starts Ragnarok!
But that's not even the most exciting part. Because if the Everywhen truly is the afterlife of the gods, then there is one possibility that I simply cannot stop thinking about. Imagine Faye traveling through this realm and encountering gods whose lives were forever changed by one man, Kratos. Imagine hearing the names Ares, Poseidon, Helios, Hermes, Hercules, Zeus, Balder, Heimdall, etc. And imagine if this montage plays.
A destiny awaits etched in blood and stone. Rise, oh mighty ones, let your spirits soar. For the legacy of valor is what we fight for. In the face of darkness, let the fury ignite. Together we shall stand, vanquishing the night.
He's trying to make you a great warrior.
You succeeded.
Now, am I saying that this is going to happen? No. This is purely speculation on my part. But if a realm called the Afterlife of the Gods exists, then Santa Monica has the opportunity to explore ideas that were previously impossible within the franchise. And honestly, I also think many people are treating this game as if Faye is permanently replacing Kratos. I don't see it that way. At least right now, Faye is simply the protagonist of this game, not the entire future of the franchise. In fact, I think the opposite could end up being true. What if this game isn't replacing Kratos? What if it's setting up his next journey? With characters like Sekhmet already appearing and multiple pantheons potentially colliding inside the Everywhen, I wouldn't be surprised if the story eventually becomes the bridge that leads God of War towards Egypt. And if that happens, Faye may end up playing one of the most important roles in the future of the franchise, not as Kratos' replacement, but as the person who helps open the door for the next era of God of War. I think it's far too early to write this game off before we have even had the chance to experience it for ourselves.